I have to say that I was always in love.
At 85 years old, the legendary singer and actress Tennille is finally breaking a silence that lasted nearly half a century. She was one half of the beloved duo, Captain and Tennille, and her voice soared on the global anthem, "Love Will Keep Us Together." A Grammy-winning smash, a cultural phenomenon. But behind the gilded facade, behind the dazzling grin that graced every album cover and TV screen, Toni was fighting a desperate, private battle. Her marriages, the ones the world saw as storybook romances, were, in truth, houses built on sand, sheltering secrets of profound loneliness, deep emotional neglect, and choices that broke her heart. Now, after decades of keeping the illusion alive, Tennille is giving us the key to her private diary, revealing the raw, personal truth about the love that defined her and the hidden cost of the fame she never truly wanted. Toni's life started far from the Hollywood lights. Born in Montgomery, Alabama in 1940, she was steeped in a creative environment. Her father, Frank, ran a furniture store but secretly yearned for the stage, having sung with Bob Crosby's Bobcats. Her mother, Catherine, was a pioneer, hosting her own television program, a true rarity for a woman of that time. Toni was a classically trained prodigy, immersing herself in piano at Auburn University. Her future seemed set until fate intervened with a brutal crash. Her father's business collapsed in 1959. Everything changed. The family packed up and moved to Balboa, California, where the future icon had to trade her piano keys for office work. She took mind-numbing jobs as a file clerk and statistical analyst. She was quiet, she was anonymous, and she was hiding a tremendous musical talent that was aching to be released. Before Captain, there was the forgotten man, Kenneth Shearer. In the early 1960s, while Toni was still navigating the anonymous side of the music world, she entered her first marriage. This union was a whisper, undistinguished, almost invisible. It was over in 1972, ending silently in divorce just as her star was about to explode. In her later reflections, Toni spoke of Kenneth with a cold, almost clinical distance. There were no dramatic fights, no scandal, just a quiet, deep recognition that the marriage had not fulfilled the needs of her heart or her creativity. It was not a failure. It was simply a practice run, a formative experience that lacked the passion and, critically, the harmonious connection she desperately desired. This quiet ending was simply the prelude to the much grander, much more public heartbreak that was waiting just around the corner. Toni's life changed forever when she met Daryl Dragon while working on a rock musical in Los Angeles. Daryl was a gifted keyboardist, fresh off a stint with the legendary Beach Boys. He had an air of quiet, intense mystery. He saw past Toni's office job, past her classical training. He saw her voice. They formed Captain and Tennille, combining her soaring, warm vocals with his meticulous, often complex arrangements. The collaboration was magic. The synergy was undeniable. In 1975, the world felt the magic. "Love Will Keep Us Together" hit #1, dominating the charts and defining an entire decade of soft rock. The ensuing variety show amplified their image, presenting them as America's sweethearts. The definitive portrait of a happy, loving couple. But the real drama wasn't in the music. It was in the silence behind the stage curtain. Toni and Daryl married in 1975, riding the tidal wave of their success. But almost immediately, the illusion began to crack. In her 2016 memoir, Toni gave a stunning confession. "People saw us as this happy, loving couple, and I went along with it because that was the act, behind the doors of their shared life." Daryl was intensely private, deeply withdrawn, and emotionally unavailable. Toni described him as a good man, but a profoundly troubled man whose controlling tendencies ran their life. He managed all their money, avoided all emotional discussion, and most painfully, could not share his heart. Toni found herself playing the role of caretaker, decision-maker, an emotional rock, a rock that was crumbling under the immense pressure. She was the one who sang the anthems of connection, but she was the one who was sinking into isolation. The contrast between their public triumph and private turmoil was stark, crushing, and deeply corrosive. For nearly 40 years, Toni Tennille remained committed. Yet the one thing she desperately needed, emotional intimacy, was always locked away. The silence between them wasn't quiet. It was deafening. She longed for warmth, for conversation, for the simple reassurance of being truly seen. What she received was distance. She captured this silent heartbreak with devastating clarity. I was lying next to a man who would not or could not return my love. Think about that. She was a superstar, sharing a home and a bed with the man she loved. Yet she felt profoundly invisible. Daryl was not abusive in the traditional sense, but his emotional withdrawal created a void that swallowed Toni whole. She stayed, clinging to the hope of change, convincing herself that her devotion would somehow break down his walls. The hope faded, the loneliness deepened, and by 2014, after 4 decades of compromise and endurance, Toni knew she had to make an impossible choice. She filed for divorce. Her explanation was a simple yet heartbreaking declaration of independence. I knew I had to leave, not to hurt him, but to save myself. The true measure of Toni's devotion came after the marriage ended. The divorce was finalized in 2014, but her care for Daryl never wavered. As Daryl's health deteriorated due to Parkinson's disease, Toni stepped in. She orchestrated his care, moved him close to her home in Arizona, and was a constant, stabilizing presence. I just couldn't stay married to him anymore, she explained, but I wasn't going to abandon him. This act of compassion puzzled everyone, especially Daryl himself. He couldn't grasp why she left, a confusion that tragically mirrored the decades of emotional distance that had destroyed their marriage. He had never understood the cost of his own silence, yet Toni was there until the final scene. In 2019, Toni was by his side, holding his hand as he passed away. Her grief was real, but so was her liberation. The divorce had not severed the bond. It had simply reshaped it, allowing her to care for him while finally reclaiming her own life. Toni Tennille broke her decades of silence not for revenge, but for clarity. Her 2016 memoir was an honest reckoning with her own story, a thoughtful, clear-eyed testament to resilience. She wanted the world to understand. You can love someone and still leave them. That love and self-preservation must coexist. Today, Toni Tennille is celebrated not just for her unforgettable hits, but for her honesty, her grace, and her courage. She is an icon who reminds us that the perfect smiles we see often mask untold sorrows, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is the one you perform for yourself. A woman who taught the world that love will keep us together eventually had to learn that sometimes self-respect is what sets us free. Subscribe to Celebrity Confessions. Tell us in the comments, what shocked you most about the Captain and Tennille marriage?